A quorum being present, the Committee on Homeland Security Subcommittee on Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Communications will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today for consideration of H.R. 5459, the Cyber Preparedness Act of 2016, H.R. 5460, the First Responder Access to Innovative Technologies Act, and H.R. 5346, the Securing Our Agriculture and Food Act. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. I am pleased the subcommittee is meeting this morning to consider three bills that are a result of information sharing and testimony at subcommittee hearings and meetings with stakeholders. First, the subcommittee will consider H.R. 5459, the Cyber Preparedness Act of 2016. I introduced H.R. 5459 to address a number of findings from our May 24th joint hearing on cyber preparedness. These findings include the need to enhance cyber risk information sharing with state and major urban area fusion centers, share information on best practices with state and local stakeholders, clarify the eligibility of state Homeland Security grant program and urban area security initiative funding for cybersecurity enhancements, and work to combat the overclassification of cyber risk information so that it can be shared more broadly with stakeholders who have a need to know. I appreciate the ranking member joining me as an original co-sponsor of this bill. Following H.R. 5459, we will consider H.R. 5460, the First Responder Innovative Technologies Act, introduced by Ranking Member Payne. This bill seeks to establish a uniform review process for state Homeland Security grant program and urban area security initiative applications seeking to purchase equipment that does not meet or exceed national voluntary consensus standards. In this continuously changing threat environment, first responders rely on equipment and technology to meet their vital missions. As was demonstrated at the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Demo Day I had the opportunity to participate in yesterday, the private sector and government are continuously working to develop innovative technology. The committee has learned, however, that the development of voluntary consensus standards does not always keep pace with this innovation, and FEMA does not have a uniform review process for these kinds of applications, nor do they have a mechanism to consider applications for equipment for which no voluntary consensus standard exists. Ranking Member Payne's bill seeks to establish a common-sense process, and I am proud to be an original co-sponsor. Finally, the subcommittee will consider H.R. 5346, the Securing Our Agriculture and Food Act, introduced by the gentleman from Iowa, Congressman David Young. This bill seeks to authorize the Department of Homeland Security's Food, Agriculture, and Veterinary Defense Program within the Office of Health Affairs. This subcommittee held a hearing on February 26th to examine the potential devastating impacts of an international attack on or natural disruption of United States agriculture or food production systems, one of our nation's critical infrastructure sectors. Coming from Iowa, Congressman Young knows all too well the importance of protecting the sector, which is vital to the economy and our way of life. I appreciate him introducing this bill, which I am pleased to co-sponsor. I want to thank all the members for working together in a bipartisan fashion to address these bills, advance these bills. This morning's markup is just the beginning of the process, and I look forward to working with the members and stakeholders to further enhance these bills as we prepare for full committee markup and floor consideration. The Chair now recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne, for an opening statement.
Good morning. At the outset, I'd like to congratulate Chairman Donovan on his first markup with the subcommittee gavel and to thank him for continuing the subcommittee's tradition of bipartisanship. Before I discuss these measures, I would like to send, did I do it already? I'm sorry. Before I discuss these measures, I'd like to send my thoughts and condolences to those who were injured or who lost loved ones in the Orlando shooting this past Sunday. I also want to thank all of the first responders who bravely attended to the scene, as well as the doctors, nurses, and who treated all of the injured. The Orlando tragedy is a critical reminder that equipping our first responders with the tools necessary to do their job is an American priority. Accordingly, I am pleased that we are marking up H.R. 5460, the First Responders Access to Innovative Technologies Act. As these threats that first responders have to tackle continue to evolve, it is critical that they have the equipment necessary to respond. The private sector is working rapidly to develop and move to the market the latest first responders technologies. Many first responders, however, are not able to acquire the advanced equipment because they are not able to use their Homeland Security Grant Program funds to purchase it. Under current law, equipment purchased with Homeland Security Grant Program funding is required to meet or exceed national voluntary consensus standards. Although FEMA does review grantee requests to purchase equipment that does not meet consensus standards, stakeholders have complained that the process lacks uniformity, predictability, and transparency. Moreover, there is no process to review requests to purchase equipment for which no consensus standards exist. Unfortunately, the process for developing voluntary consensus standards for the first responders' equipment is slow and has not kept up pace with the evolution of the technology or the demands of first responders. H.R. 5460 will help equip first responders with the tools needed to do their jobs better and safer by requiring FEMA to establish a clear, transparent process to review requests to purchase innovative technologies with grant funds. I would like to thank Chairman Donovan for his partnership on this measure. I would also like to thank the Security Industry Association for its support of H.R. 5460, and I ask unanimous consent to insert its support letter into the record. I am pleased that the subcommittee is considering H.R. 5459, the Cyber Preparedness Act of 2016, legislation introduced by Chairman Donovan, which I am pleased to co-sponsor. H.R. 5459 responds to deficiencies in cyber threat information sharing identified through the subcommittee's oversight activities. It seeks to bolster the dissemination of Homeland Security information related to cyber threats by creating a mechanism for DHS, National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center, to share information with the state and major urban area fusion centers. Finally, I would like to thank Representative Young for introducing H.R. 5346, the Securing Our Agricultural and Food Act. H.R. 5346 clarifies the role of the Assistant Secretary for Health Affairs with respect to DHS responsibilities for food, agriculture, and veterinary defense. This legislation charges the Assistant Secretary for Health Affairs with managing and overseeing the department's duties under HSPD-9, coordinating with appropriate federal agencies in this mission space, and leading DHS policy initiatives on food, animal, and agriculture incidents. I urge my colleagues to support all of the measures under consideration today, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Payne. Other members of the subcommittee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record by agreement between the chair and the ranking member. The subcommittee, by unanimous consent, shall use an amendment roster today.
Reserving the right to object, I will not object. Would the chair please explain our agreement regarding the amendment roster? I yield to the chairman.
I thank the ranking member and all the members of the subcommittee for agreeing to the use of the amendment roster. We have agreed that the bills be open to amendment at any point and that we shall take up amendments in the order listed on the roster. The chair will allow members to offer amendments listed on the roster out of order to the extent practicable and in a manner not prohibited by the House or committee rules. Amendments not listed on the roster may be considered at the conclusion of consideration of the roster.
I thank the chair for this explanation and withdraw my reservation.
I now call up H.R. 5459, the Cyber Preparedness Act of 2016, and H.R. 5460, the First Responder Access to Innovative Technologies Act, and ask unanimous consent that they be considered en bloc. Without objection, so ordered. The bills are circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bills.
H.R. 5459 and H.R. 5460.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bills are considered read and open to amendment at any point. Does any member wish to be recognized on the bills? There are no amendments listed on the roster. Are there any amendments to the bills? There being no amendments, the question now occurs on agreeing to the bills. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The bills are agreed to. The question now occurs on reporting the bills to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. I now call up H.R. 5346, the Securing Our Agriculture and Food Act. I ask unanimous consent that a statement from the bill's sponsor, Mr. Young of Iowa, be inserted into the record without objection. Without objection, so ordered. The bill was circulated in advance, and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 5346.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with, and the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Per the roster agreement, I have an amendment in the nature of a substitute listed on the roster. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 5346 offered by Mr. Donovan.
Without objection, the reading is dispensed with, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered base text for the purpose of the amendment. The amendment in the nature of a substitute was noticed to subcommittee members in compliance with committee rules. I recognize myself to briefly explain the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This amendment incorporates technical assistance provided by the Department of Homeland Security and seeks to further delineate the program's responsibilities, including its responsibilities pursuant to the Homeland Security Presidential Directive No. 9. Is there any further discussion on the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Seeing that there's none, there being no further discussion on the amendment in the nature of a substitute, the subcommittee will move to consider all the amendments on the roster. Per the roster agreement, listed next is an amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne. Would the gentleman like to offer the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment on the roster, and I ask that it be considered at this time.
The clerk shall report the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 5346 offered by Mr. Payne.
Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with. Mr. Payne is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In February, this subcommittee held a hearing on the threats to our food and agriculture sector and how to confront them. At the hearing, I emphasized the important role that Customs and Border Protection's agriculture inspectors play in screening imported goods and keeping dangerous pests and insects out of our country. With the Port of Newark and Liberty National Airport in my district, I know the invaluable role agricultural inspectors play in protecting the public health and the economy. Although H.R. 5346 may not be an appropriate vehicle to address the agriculture inspector's staffing challenges that continue to be of concern, it does present an opportunity to bolster support for agricultural inspectors and better leverage their expertise as the department carries out its HSPD 9 mission. Toward that end, my amendment would require the Assistant Secretary for Health Affairs to coordinate with CPB and other departmental components on activities related to food and agriculture security and screening procedures for domestic and imported products. I urge my colleagues to support my amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? There being no further discussion, the question now occurs on the amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mr. Payne. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. There are no additional amendments listed on the roster. Are there any further amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute? There being no further amendments, the question now occurs on agreeing to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 5346 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment in the nature of a substitute is agreed to. The question now occurs on reporting H.R. 5346 as amended to the full committee with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table, and staff is authorized to make any technical and conforming changes. This concludes consideration of the bills noticed by the subcommittee for today. There being no further business to transact, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
All right.
Guys, thank you so very much.
Okay.
What was that time?